Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're going to crack open the cognitive toolkit that high performers use to deconstruct and solve problems they've never ever seen before. So, what's the secret sauce, right? Well, it turns out it's not just about being smart in some vague sense. It's actually about having a very specific set of mental tools. And in this explainer, we're going to open up that toolbox and take a really good look at what's inside. Okay, so let's get into it. We're going to start with the foundational components. You could call it the core hardware that powers our entire thinking process. First things first, we've got to clear something up. We often throw around the terms short-term memory and working memory like they're the same thing, but they're not. They're actually fundamentally different. Short-term memory, that's just a temporary holding bin for information. Working memory, that's a whole different ballgame. That's an active workshop. Yeah, the best way to think about working memory is like your brain's computer RAM. It is the mental workbench where you don't just store ideas, but you're actively juggling them, combining them, and messing with them to solve little pieces of the puzzle. The bigger your capacity here, the more complexity you can handle at once without getting totally overwhelmed. But here's the thing, working memory isn't operating alone. It gets this huge boost from processing speed. And this isn't just about thinking fast for the sake of it. When you can process things faster, you solve the smaller bits of a problem more quickly, and that frees up your mental resources, letting you focus on the big picture. Okay, so if working memory and processing speed are our cognitive hardware, our RAM and our processor, what about the software? What are the actual programs we run on it? That's where our reasoning toolkit comes in. This is what helps us crack the code of a new problem. You know, when you really look at people who are just amazing at solving brand new problems, you start to see a pattern. They are consistently using three key pieces of mental software. These are the reasoning engines that turn all that raw data into an elegant solution. First up is fluid intelligence. This is your raw, figure-it-out horsepower. It's a skill that kicks in when you're dropped into a totally new situation. You know, like trying to build some of that flat-pack furniture without the instructions, and you just have to figure it out from scratch. But our brains are smart. They love shortcuts. And probably the biggest shortcut of all is pattern recognition. This is that amazing ability to look at a completely new problem and have a little part of your brain go, hey, this feels kind of familiar. It's all about finding that hidden structure that lets you map the unknown onto something you already get, which just dramatically speeds up getting to the answer. This quote right here, it's a classic definition of intelligence, and it points us straight to our third and, maybe the most critical piece of software in the box. It's not just about what you know, it's about your ability to adapt. And what this really gets at is a simple truth. Great problem solvers don't get stuck just banging their heads against the same wall over and over. They have cognitive flexibility. When one path leads to a dead end, they've got the mental agility to just back up, take a look around, and try a completely different approach. So we've got the hardware, we've got the software, but what's running the whole show? What's the operating system that makes sure everything works together smoothly? Well, that operating system is something called metacognition. Just think of it as your brain's very own quality control manager. It's that little voice in your head that's kind of floating above it all, watching your own thinking process and monitoring how you're doing in real time. So what does metacognition actually sound like in your head? It's that constant inner voice asking those simple but incredibly powerful questions. Am I on the right track here? Is this approach really working? Wait a second, what part of this do I not get? It's a constant internal check-in that steers your whole effort. And here is the absolute key behavior. When they hit a wall or feel uncertain, high performers don't just barrel ahead blindly. They use metacognition to hit pause, check their own work, and deliberately ask if their strategy is the right one. This habit of self-monitoring, it's a huge hallmark of effective thinking. All right, so we've looked at the hardware, the software, and the operating system. Now for the fun part. How do all these pieces actually come together to tackle a really complex, brand new problem? It all clicks together in this dynamic, 5-step loop. First, you use your working memory to break the problem down into smaller, more manageable chunks. Then, your brain's pattern recognition software kicks in, searching for anything familiar. From there, you start to rapidly test out your ideas. Now, here's where it gets really interesting. If you get stuck, your cognitive flexibility is what allows you to reframe the problem and look at it from a totally new angle. And overseeing this entire process, you've got your metacognition, constantly monitoring your progress, asking, is this working? And feeding that information right back into the loop. It's a continuous cycle of doing and reflecting. Okay, let's bring this all home. If there's one big idea you should take away from this entire explainer, what is it? The bottom line is this: superior problem solving, what we often call high intelligence, it isn't some single magical trait you're born with. It's an integrated system. It's about having this versatile toolkit of mental skills and, maybe even more importantly, knowing which tool to use and when. It really is less about raw brain power and way more about the strategic way you use that power. And that leaves us with one final, and I think really powerful thought. If all these things, working memory, flexibility, metacognition, if they're tools in a kit instead of fixed traits, well, that begs the question, what can we do to actually sharpen each one of our tools?